What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of On the Bump. And on the bump, once again, this week we have LJ Evans, aka D3 Productions. LJ, how are you doing this week?
Doing good, man. Happy to be back on here. Thanks for having me. Ready to get into this topic. Strong passion of mine, but yeah, super hyped to be back on. Thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. LJ, can you just give a brief explanation and description of who you are, your platform, and kind of what your background is?
Yeah, so like Andrew said, my name is LJ Evans. I'm a senior collegiate athlete, baseball player at St. Vincent College, a small school in Western Pennsylvania. Um, I focus on the mental side of sports. I also have a YouTube channel. Um, Basically posted vlogs, did videos with like Eric Sim, things like that. Had some really cool experiences. And now I've kind of shifted into more of the mental side of sports because that's kind of what I have a strong passion for. So I've been focusing on just kind of growing my knowledge in the world of sports psychology, learning how athletes think, learning the tools and going through studies and looking at actual research on what specific tools can help athletes succeed and give them the best chance to succeed. So that's kind of where I plan on going. I plan on going to graduate school to further my education in sports and exercise psychology, just getting a better understanding of the topic, and then hopefully being some kind of mental strength coach in the future. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Just love the passion for the game of baseball in and of itself, and especially the mental side of it as well.
And for anyone who hasn't seen episode 3 of this podcast, LJ was one of the original people to come on the podcast in the beginning.
Oh
So
yeah.
awesome that we can finally get another opportunity to talk to him, pick his brain, and just have another great conversation. So without further ado, let's get into today's topic. And today's topic is how important is mental toughness and mental performance in athletes in general? So I think nowadays, especially in our culture that's so engulfed in the TikTok, the Instagram, the social medias of the world, there's this kind of overarching feeling of all these amazing, amazing people. People post all sorts of highlights of themselves all over Instagram, social media, and it creates this sense of like, wow, like there's a lot of really good athletes in the world. There's a lot of competition. And so I feel like a lot of people fall into the trap of obviously they want to be the greatest at what they do. They want to be a great player in whatever they're doing. And so it's really hard to, I feel like, have a strong mental game to, not compare yourself to others, in which I feel like a lot of people fall into the trap of. And so generally, LJ, kind of what are your thoughts on mental performance and how important that is for athletes, especially like we talked about with the culture of today?
Yeah, I think the world we live in today, especially I think growing up, a lot of what I was taught is get in the gym, get strong. That's going to boost your on-field performance in practice. But I really feel like what's not talked about a lot is the mental side of sports. You don't see a lot of kids. If I were to take a pool of 100 kids and ask, what percent have you focused on the mental side of sports as opposed to the physical side of sports? Most people would say 10% or less mental and over 90% physical. And that's normal. That's just kind of the world we live in today. Um, but I think it should be a 50-50 split, if not more mental, because if you don't have a good mental, you're not going to perform physically. You're not allowing yourself to be the best person that you can on and off the field. And that's the beauty of focusing on the mental side of sports. It's not only developing these mindsets and these goals, aspirations, positive self-talk, everything like that to help you on the field. It's also helping you off the field as well, become a better man, become a better woman, just being a better person overall. So I think there's so many things that you can take away from this. And I definitely do feel like lately it's been talked about more. It's starting to become more prevalent, which is a great thing. I think it's really great that it's becoming more, but I think it's just as important, if not more important, than the physical part of it.
So, LJ, how do you think that the physical and the mental are kind of put together? Now, obviously we know with a lot of people that you kind of have to, I mean, obviously, right? Your brain tells your body what to do. There's
Mhm.
a connection, there's impulses. There's all sorts of things that go on subconsciously for us to, move our hands, breathe oxygen, different things like that. But how does the mind really influence the body when it comes to performing on the field or performing under pressure or different things like that? Can you kind of speak on that from your experience?
Yeah, so I think there's two different sides of it. There is your mindset off the field, and then there's your mindset on the field. I think they're two separate entities, and what I mean by that is for your mindset off the field, developing a good mental and a good psyche, that improves your habits. When you make habits, you get in a consistent routine where you're training your body, where you're giving your mind time through things such as journaling, meditation, reading scripture, things like that. You're freeing your mind from the outside world. You're being within yourself. Getting in good habits and good routines on a daily basis will help you, for one, have a clear mind, focus on the things that you need to focus on, and it will improve your mental health overall, which is very important. And for two, good habits and the good psyche, the good mental part of the game off the field, that helps you with the physical part on the field. That will motivate you to get better physically. So it goes hand in hand. The more mentally tough you are, the more you're going to push yourself in the gym. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is on the field performance. So there's a lot of different things. There's a lot of different tools that you can use on the field with managing stress, poor coaching, um, rough parents, like getting criticized by your parents frequently, losing love for the game, injuries, everything like that. So there's that whole different aspect as well. One of the main things that I like to do personally on the field is positive self-talk. I know we talked about this before, but really just allowing yourself to believe and trust in your abilities. When you have those good habits, it translates to on the field because you know that you are the most prepared that you can be. You're playing with no regrets. You're playing at a level that you're confident in. A lot of times, if you have bad habits off the field, you're not going to feel confident on the field. A lot of these guys, you can wear all the gear you want, like you can wear whatever, but at the end of the day, in your own mind, you might look good, but in your mind, you're still going to have that self-doubt. So it's very important to develop those habits off the field. So on the field, you have that confidence, and with that confidence, you're able to implement the things such as positive self-talk, goal setting, meditation before games, and you can actually truly implement that in games and get the full experience out of that from developing those habits off the field.
And kind of like you mentioned, positive self-talk and how that's really important. I know for me, a personal experience of mine, when I'm trying to do something that I don't necessarily believe it fully that I can do, I just start saying it out loud, whether
Mhm.
that's in my training or that mostly in my training, whether I'm in the gym working out, but you just kind of say it to yourself until you really affirm it and believe it. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's really underrated with a lot of athletes in particular because I don't feel like a lot of people take responsibility and understand and look themselves in the mirror and say, look, this is the way it is right now. This is it. And I just need to believe it and accept it. And I think that's something, at least for me mentally, that was a big turning point for me in my college career thus far, is just saying, like, this is where I'm at. This is what it is.
Yep.
You just have to accept it. And here we are. And
Mhm.
that's important. And I feel like in my own experience, that really changed a lot of things. What would you say kind of on that, LJ? Have you ever had a moment or an experience where you were really like, wow, I need to really train my brain and how I perform on the field?
Yeah, I think for me, going back to my freshman year of college where I was competing with different outfielders for a starting spot, it really comes down to it's a mental battle competing, especially, I mean, you can look at it for travel ball, for high school baseball, for college baseball. No matter what, you're competing with different athletes to get to that next level and competing with them to get time on the field. So in my mind, I was like, well, what can separate me from these different guys? If I'm the same talent level as someone, would coach want someone who is going to throw a temper tantrum after every time they get out, or has confidence in themselves, takes that risk to make that risky play because they believe that they can do it and they actually truly feel that they can do it. So they're more likely to make that play. And I think at that point, I was like, I really need to. lock in on the mental side of sports because especially college baseball, it's a grind and baseball is a very taxing sport. And when I learned, especially with college baseball, because in high school, I mean, I would hit like above 400. So I was almost succeeding as much as I was failing. But in college, you fail more times than you succeed. That's just how it is. So you're going to fail. Learning to deal with that failure and accepting the fact that, okay, I'm going to fail, but how can I overcome that? I think that was kind of another turning point for me, realizing that I'm going to fail. So I'm going to have to learn to cope with that failure. And I'm going to have to learn to accept that failure. Forget, wash, regroup. That's kind of the three words that I kind of repeat to myself every game when I make an out. Forget, wash, regroup. It's just a good way to accept, forget, wash, regroup, however you want to do it. But think about it for a little bit, ponder it, know what you need to adjust, wash, wash whatever happened, forget about it, and then regroup. Be like, okay, I need to make this adjustment. So understanding kind of those three components, I think, is definitely the point that I was like, okay, I think the mental part of this game is serious, especially with the amount of failure there is in baseball. And that kind of is what propelled me to where I am today.
I feel like with baseball and softball and almost football to an extent, there's a lot of failure in the game. There's
Mhm.
just a lot of failure. I mean, you could really apply that to a lot of different sports overall, but I feel like that's what really makes sports unique is the fact that there's so much failure, there's so much adversity, and it really challenges you not only mentally, physically, but almost in every aspect of your livelihood
Yep.
when you're on the field. And so that failure, you can either look at it as a good thing or a bad thing. But obviously, if you look at it as a bad thing, it'll just continue to spiral and spiral and spiral and spiral. But if you look at the positive sides of it, I feel like it's a lot easier to grow and get better because of the bad things
Yep.
and in the failures. There's a lot of learning moments, especially in those failures. And that's obviously the beauty of baseball, right?
Hmm.
There's so much, it's kind of like life in a lot of ways with how much of the good and how much of the bad that there is. And so, LJ, with that being said, the failures, how important are those as an athlete to understand those and critically think about them and reframe the thinking in a sense? How important is it to have a strategy to deal with failure?
I think it's extremely crucial. I think if you don't have a strategy to overcome failure and learn from failure, I don't think you're going to grow as an athlete. And that goes for on and off the field because from an on the field standpoint, I believe that you learn from your failure. You only get better when you fail. If you're succeeding, everyone's going to fail at some point. But if you don't know how to cope with that failure, then you're on this plane. Once you fail, you fall down here. But if you don't learn to cope with that and learn to, grow from that, get better from that, that trend is just going to keep going downwards and you're going to go on a downward spiral. And that's what you see with a lot of players. A lot of players that are known as quote unquote the mental cases, they might be very talented, but once they mess up and you can quote unquote get in their head, they go on a spiral and they sometimes it causes them to make errors and mental mistakes that they normally wouldn't make if they had a good mental side of the game. Off the field, same thing as well. I mean, life is not all sunshine and rainbows. Like the world will just pound you and keep pounding you. And you have to learn how to accept that failure, learn from it and grow from it. And you have to be open to failure. Like I love failing. I really do because every time I fail, it's a learning opportunity. What can I learn about myself? And it's also an opportunity for growth. Like because I failed, I can learn how to fix this and I can learn how to improve myself in that different aspect, whether that be in baseball or in life. So I think seeing failure from a different lens is so crucial, and I believe that it's really one of the most powerful tools that you can have on the mental side of sports.
Absolutely. I think also too, it's important to, as athletes and as people who are just so incredibly focused on getting better and being as perfect as we can in the game, to accept those good things when they do happen, the positives. And I think there's a lot to be said about that, especially when it comes to, I mean, myself being a perfectionist, and I feel like a lot of athletes are. So it's important to realize that, like, there are mistakes, there are failures, but also, too, you have to take the good moments and the rewarding moments and really look at them as these are great moments. I need to soak these in as much as I can and learn from these as much as possible. So, LJ, has there been any memorable moments where you've realized or you've told yourself, like, man, all this hard work is really paying off? How did that feel mentally?
I think the fact I wouldn't say there's not a ton of success stories that I've had. I feel like I've been most rewarded from when I fail, to be quite honest. I remember last year, we go down to Florida for spring training, and that week my timing was off. I was just really struggling. But towards the end of the week, I picked it back up and I was like, I mean, I started hitting really well towards the end of the week. And I remember just sitting there and be like, wow, like I really could have let that spiral. And when I was failing, it was mentally taxing and it wasn't like obviously a fun time. Um, but reflecting on that, I learned so much about myself from that point, and that's kind of the first moment I've been like, wow, like I really am able to use what I've learned in this instance. Like I'm really able to implement these things because I knew I had the ability to do it. It was just all of trusting myself, trusting the work I've put in. Um, so that moment, kind of where I kind of flipped the switch, I was like, I really wouldn't have been able to do that without, the mental side of my game. So that was definitely an instance where I was able to turn it around. And I looked back on it afterwards and I was like, yeah, it's definitely from the mental side of the game, not the physical.
Feel like a lot of times too, like with especially in my experience, I feel like there's been a lot of moments where I don't really realize that it is mental, and I kind of blame it on other things, like other excuses or maybe a physical standpoint or something like that. But you don't realize it's mental. But then when you again you go through those affirmations and you look at those good positive things and you really reflect on them, you're really like, wow, like it really was all just in my head. It's really all
Yeah.
just in my head or in my heart to an extent. And you're kind of sitting there like, man, like it's much easier than all the pressure you put upon yourself.
Mhm.
And for me, last year, my junior year of college, it was really, I think that was a really good way to define it because there was a lot of times where I was on the mound and I was putting all this unneeded nervousness and pressure on myself. I especially remember that too in my first start last year. I was really nervous going into the game with it being my first college start and everything.
Mhm.
And I remember I just had this really bad like pregame bullpen, everything, and I had a really bad first inning. But after that, I kind of was just like I took a deep breath and I was like, all right, the worst is behind us, hopefully.
Yeah.
At that point, I didn't really do too bad the rest of the game, but it was definitely one of the bigger learning moments for me. And a lot of last year was kind of defined by that too, where a lot of it was really in my head. And once I kind of flipped that switch, it was a lot easier to take the mound every, 3 or 4 days and do the best that I could do with what I had. And so I do think baseball is especially very, very mental. And my coach, fortunately, at my college, talks a lot about the mental game, more so than anything else. And I remember my earlier years in college, that was really, really big for me because I was very timid, I was very fearful. And it's a brand new environment in college, and it's a completely different ball game than high school. And I feel like that's very overlooked in a lot of capacities. And so, as someone who is very young and very underdeveloped and small and tiny, you're kind of like this whole brand new world is scary. And for me, the mental side, accomplishing that and looking at those different aspects and really getting better in those in my earlier years leading up to last year was very, very important. And I do think that it's important that athletes do find a way to train their brain in a sense, right? I mean,
Mhm.
in our culture in today's game, LJ, how do you think athletes can train their brain and their mental performance?
I think just by finding people, for starters, I mean, finding someone who has had some kind of experience, growing in the mental field. Um, I think also just like looking for resources. I mean, there's a ton of good resources out there where you can learn how to grow. I mean, you can go on YouTube, you can look at people who sell courses. I mean, you can look at just personal strength coaches for the mental side of it. I think there's a lot of really great resources out there that can give you more of that in-depth, statistical, scientifically proven ideas and facts that can really improve your game on and off the field. And I think along with that too, just working on, for starters, like if someone wants to, develop their mental side and don't know where to start, just start getting in good habits. Like limit your screen time on your phone. Like instead of sitting there mindlessly scrolling for 10 minutes, sit on the floor, turn your lights off, and just be present with yourself. Practice some form of meditation. And if you don't know how to do it, that's fine. Just sit there with your eyes closed, let your mind wander. Just work on controlling your breath. 3 seconds in through the mouth, 3 seconds out through the nose. Just let everything that you're thinking about, just let it go. Think about it. Think about all the worries, and then think about releasing all that through your breath. I mean, that's a really good place to start. Just connecting with yourself. Find a way to connect with yourself and allow yourself to be, you know, one from within. Once you have that down, you'll be able to slowly, okay, my screen time's down. I'm getting in better habits. That's going to motivate you. You're going to get a lot more energy throughout the day. Now you're like, all right, I want to go hit the gym. So I think for starters, I definitely think just find ways. There's a bunch of different tools you can do. Like you can journal. That's something I do a lot. Meditation, those are the two big ones for me. I definitely recommend both of those. Trying both of those out. And then if those don't work, just find things that make you you. Like find things that, whether it be calling your parents or spending time with family, but something where you can reconnect with yourself. Personally, I like things where you're alone, just giving yourself some kind of alone time where you can think about your thoughts and where you can write things down, just freely express yourself without anyone around. I think that's kind of the start of where you can reconnect with yourself and start building that mental confidence within yourself.
How important, LJ, do you think is having faith? Whether that's reading scripture or personal prayer or some type of, Christian meditation. How important is faith when it comes to mental performance and the mental game?
I think it's really important. For me, I do read a lot of scripture, and I started doing this for conference series last year, but each kind of series that we have, I'd write a different scripture verse like in my hat or like on my wrist tape. And it's just a good reminder that you're not alone. Like everything that you do in life, I have all the gifts that I have right now because of God and because of my faith. I think I am where I am today because of my faith. I think allowing yourself to trust in God's plan for you and kind of putting it in his hands, instead of, a lot of athletes feel this like heavy burden on their hearts. Like before, when I like didn't really care less about like mental side of sports or anything like that, I kind of felt this just pressure within myself, pressure to perform, pressure to please other people, just pressure to be someone that I'm not. And kind of once I kind of tuned into my faith along with it, I discovered a lot of things about myself that I really wouldn't have. Just things such as playing for him, to be honest. I mean, playing for my faith, like realizing that no matter what happens, I know I have God by my side. And I know that my faith, whatever happens, is meant for something bigger. It's meant for a different purpose. And that understanding right there that's probably the thing that's changed like my life the most in sports, is just knowing that no matter if I strike out, no matter what happens, like I do have my faith, the Holy Spirit's in me, the Holy Spirit's within me, and that it's all meant for a bigger purpose. And that at some point, I might not know why that happened at that point, but it just takes that burden and all that stress and anxiety that you feel, it just kind of lifts it from you if you really believe it. Like if you artificially believe it, I did that for a while and I still felt that anxiety. And I'm not saying it's normal. Like I'm not saying it's not normal. It's very normal to feel anxious, to feel nervous. And just because you feel that doesn't mean you're not faithful. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is tuning into your faith with sports. What I do before each game is I'll meditate for 5 minutes. I'll just think about my thoughts and then I'll pray. I'll pray for 5 minutes as well. So I set time to clear my mind and then give my time back to the Lord and just really reconnect with myself. And I really feel like when I meditate, I clear my mind, but when I pray, all that worry and all that anxiety just kind of goes away because I know that I'm ready, I'm prepared, and kind of the Lord's just going to take it away from there, and then whatever happens, happens.
That nervousness, that anxiety, those are natural, I feel like, emotions that a lot of athletes
Hmm.
before they go into performance. And a lot of people, I feel like, have a choice. You can accept it or you can let it control you. And the sooner I feel like you accept it, the sooner you're able to play more freely.
Hmm.
And definitely by the grace of God, you can ask for his guidance, for his prayer, for his intercession to really take that burden from you. And again, like you said, like you truly have to believe that though. You can't artificially believe that.
Yeah.
Again, that goes back to having faith, right?
Hmm.
So I do think that that's really important when it comes to, mentality or just even lifestyle as well.
Yep.
And I think it's really important in today's game to have some type of, routine like you talked about as well, whether that's saying a prayer, meditation, breath work, or just doing simple things on a daily that really just gets you in the proper mindset to complete the task at hand.
Hmm.
There's so many different things I feel like you can apply to sports with, mentality, and you can also apply them to life, like we talked about. And so, LJ, what do you think are some other good routines or some good areas of the mental game that athletes or just people in general can grow in and get better in?
Yeah, I think a lot of what I talked about, like the starting point is really good. Um, just developing those habits, I think is, again, I'll say it again because it's just so crucial. Like developing those good habits off the field, practicing meditation, journaling, things like that, especially meditation, because that's something I really like to do before games. And then along with that, just positive self-talk, like trusting yourself, trusting your abilities, being one with yourself. I think once you do that off the field, it's so important because once you get on the field, it's not any different from anything you do on a daily basis. You're just doing it again, but in a different setting. So you're going to feel those same emotions. You're more likely to reconnect with yourself if it's already a habit. If you're doing it on the field for the first time, yeah, it might work, but you still might feel anxious. You still might feel nervous. I think like if you make that a part of your daily routine, it's just more than likely to translate. Another thing that I do that I think that could help a lot of people, especially from a faith aspect, is to go back on those feelings of anxiousness or anxiety, anything like that. This could be applied for pitchers, position players. Like what I do sometimes, if it's my first at bat of a series and I feel like I still feel those nerves, if I'm in the on deck circle, if I'm walking up to the plate, just like saying 5 times, I'm like 5 times to myself, just saying, Jesus, I trust in you, just saying that 5 times, like taking that time, reconnecting with yourself. And that for me has really worked being present in the moment because I know at that point I'm trusting in him. If I succeed, that's great, all his glory. But if I fail, that's great too, all of his glory. That's failure. Learning from failure is another thing because when you fail in those moments, you're like, okay, I trusted in you. It didn't work out, but I trust your plan because you allowed me to fail. So now I can look at that failure and that one failure can maybe help me out for the rest of the bats of the series. You know what I mean? So it's just really trying to see the positives in things. Um, really trying to not be so critical on yourself, trying to cut yourself some slack. Yeah, if you mess up, it's good to be mad at yourself and it's good to kind of, have that inner anger inside, but you have to use that for a greater good. You have to use that for the greater good of yourself. You have to use it for the greater glory for him and your teammates as well. So trusting in him, trusting in God, um, being able to be okay with failure, being open to failure, I think has definitely helped me along the way as well. And I definitely think it's very beneficial. And then the last thing I'll talk about, I don't think I have it at my desk here, but I have a journal. I would strongly advise people to do it. I journal in the morning and then at night, writing down my thoughts. And if I had practice, how did I do in my at bats? What did I do? What adjustments can I make? Things like that. But I don't really focus so much on that. Like I have a in-game one just so I can look back on, but I mainly just use it for my emotions. Did I take time for myself? Did I take time to reconnect with myself? Did I reach out to family? Did I reach out to friends? Did I do things that would make myself feel good from the inside? Just really, it gives you, it's a nice tool to where you can look back on and see the progression. Like you can take journaling as, okay, I'm just going to write stuff down and forget about it. But you can also take journaling as, okay, I'm going to write stuff down and I want to see my progression over time. And it's a good thing for athletes, especially at this point, gearing up towards the season, working on yourself. You can see the progression. Rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 every single day. That's what I do. Today, my mental health was 8 per se. Some days are going to be better than others. It doesn't always have to be 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. That's not progression. Progression is having a bad day, but how can you respond to that bad day? And those are the habits that you need to learn off the field because they will literally help on the field. And that's proven, and people do need to know that these tools do help.
I think another tool that we haven't yet talked about yet is, and this is something I can speak from personal experience from, is grounding. Like grounding
Hmm.
yourself, like in the present moment, whether that's like
Yep.
touching an object or chewing
Hmm.
gum. I remember I used to chew a lot of gum my freshman year from time to time. That would really help ground me. Uh,
Hmm.
Whether that's like focusing on one object and just looking at it for like 10 minutes. I mean, there's so many different things you can do with grounding
Yep.
as a baseball player, as an athlete, that I feel like really helps. And that helps me a lot. So
Hmm.
if anyone wants to take that bit of piece of advice from my mental game, there you
Yeah.
guys go.
Grounding is so crucial. Like you said, it just goes back to being in the present moment, being one with the game of baseball. It shouldn't be you and baseball. When you're on the field, it's just you and the sport. Nothing else should be going through your mind. And like you said, grounding is a great way, even for infielders, outfielders, taking your socks off, taking your shoes off, feeling the earth with your feet, like grabbing dirt in your hands and feeling the dirt. Feel what it's like. Feel what the dirt's like. Feel what the playing surface is like. Connect yourself as much as possible with the ground that you're actually playing on, or like you said, staring at an object, just letting your mind wander,
Mm.
just allowing yourself to be free of the mind. Let your mind wander, let your thoughts go. Think about those thoughts, work through those thoughts. That's also a really great tool as well.
So, LJ, we're about to wrap up here. Do you have anything else you would like to add to the podcast, say to the people? Anything else that you want to talk about?
I would just say that there's so much potential in the mental side of sports. I don't just say it, but I actually believe it. It's really helped me, especially as a man, because I'm not going to be playing baseball forever. Being able to develop these habits has really transformed my life and trusting God's plan for me in school for the season and out of season when I look for jobs, everything like that in the future. Just really trusting in God's plan, giving these tools a chance to help me develop as a man, which will help me develop on the field and get better, better team cohesion, treating teammates with respect so they gain respect for you, so they want to play better for you. There's just so many benefits to the mental side of the game. So I will say, I really hope everyone listening to this does consider at least, just try something. Might not be for you. Just keep trying one tool after another until you find something that sticks with you, and then just run with that. It's really powerful and it really can transform you in a lot of good ways.
So, LJ, once again, thank you for coming on the episode.
Absolutely.
LJ also does have a mental performance course coming out. By the time you guys are probably seeing this episode, it will probably be out. So, LJ, do you want to kind of talk about that real quickly here?
Yeah, so I'm creating a course. It's called Champions Mindset: Unlocking Your Full Potential. Basically, what it is, it's a 8 to 10 hour module video course. So basically, you sign up and then you're guided through. There's 11 modules, basically talking about a lot of the stuff we talked about here today, but more in depth, going through scientific studies, past athletes, what have they done to make them so great? A lot of great tools that hopefully you'll be able to use again to help yourself in your sport and then help yourself, as a person off the field as well. But it's a really great tool. Hopefully, you guys would be able to get something from that. So, yeah, I definitely recommend going to check that out as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, LJ, for telling everyone about that. And thank you for coming on the podcast. For anyone
Absolutely.
who is interested in LJ's course. I will put it in the description of the video, so go and check that out. If it's out by the time this podcast episode comes out, it will be in the description below. But also, everyone go and check out LJ's socials, follow him on social media, go and check it out. Once again, LJ, thank you for coming on the channel.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Absolutely.